Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaste. Welcome to the 19th session of our course Yoga and Positive Psychology for Managing Career and Life. In today's session, we are going to discuss yogic interventions for managing emotions. You perhaps can recall that in last few sessions, we are looking at yogic processes or yoga based practices as interventions at different layers of self. So, kosh, manomay kosh, vijnanamay kosh, there are different interventions we can draw from the yogic tradition and yoga based practices. For today's session, we are going to look at yogic interventions for manomay kosh and that aspect of self which is related to our emotions. Emotions, we all know, is the juiciest part of life. That is what makes life interesting, and how to manage emotions is a very important factor in terms of our managing self and managing career. So, we are going to look at yogic interventions to manage emotions, or to be precisely called in the Indian tradition Manomaya Kosh.
This is the time for little bit of revision. In the initial sessions, we talked about two sets of competencies. One set which are required to be in any profession, and another set which are required for anyone to grow well in any profession. These two sets of competencies were well identified in the first session of this course. If you remember, the set of competencies which are required to grow in any profession are about cognitive competencies, and along with that are the emotional intelligence related competencies and social intelligence related competencies.
When we connect that with managing life, we get the similar picture. Managing life is also about managing our emotions, our thoughts, and managing career is also about managing our emotions in the day to day interactions, building our network, managing our relationships at work, because that is the foundation for motivating ourselves and others, leading ourselves and others, building team, leading teams, understanding organizations and leading organizations. So, self management skills and career building skills, they are pretty overlapping to each other, and there are some discipline specific skills and there are some generic specific skills, and those generic skills we are looking at emotional intelligence and social intelligence. Let us take a short quiz. Markets are driven by, and you need to think answer to this question. What is the answer to the question markets are driven by? Investors' mood. Leadership is based on, and the answer is trust. Uptake of any technologies is linked to the customer. Some technologies can be very good, but customers may not pick it up, customers may not adopt those. What makes people, customers to adopt some technology? And that is engagement and pleasure involved in the technology. Regulations are driven by what kind of laws are passed, what kind of regulations are formed. They are driven by which factor? they are driven by activism. There can be hundreds of things on which regulations can be passed, laws can be made, but priorities naturally flow towards those regulations and those laws which are promoted by activism, activism by the government of the day or activism by the social groups. Pivot of service experience or service and experience in any customer provider and client interaction, and that is understanding and connecting. Elections are won by conviction and sentiments, not only driven by hard data, but election results are majorly influenced by the flow and direction of sentiments. Team performance is driven by motivation. Relationships are formed by human needs, love and respect. And answers to all these questions ranging from mood, trust, motivation, human needs, love, respect, etc. What is commonality in all these answers? The commonality is that all these are emotions. Life is majorly driven by emotions. It makes life juicy, it makes life interesting, it also makes life complicated. But scientifically speaking, emotions are data. Emotions, what is the functionality of emotions? The functionality of emotion is that organism get a feedback, and feedback result into some physiological activity. Feedback received from environment, that feedback can be about the threat, that can be about some pleasurable experience. All those feedback result into some physiological activities that stimulate some activity, that is primarily emotion. Emotions, that is why, can be traced back to some or other part of the body. Actually, all the emotions are connected to some biomarkers, some neurotransmitters, some physiological indicators. So, emotion perform motivational, communicative, regulatory function within and between individuals. The origin of behavior lie in personal, biological and social heritage. On reading emotions like data, we can say that emotions are data. Emotions are the information about what that organism is making or concluding about the environment. When you see what others are feeling, that is information. What their motivations are, what they are leading to, what is occupying a lot of their energy and attention. At the same time, if you do not show any emotion, that is a signal that you lack passion, you know, and you are incapable of really connecting to the challenges of the moment. So, emotions have very important role in the evolutionary process, in relationships and managing ourselves. Emotional intelligence is becoming very popular term these days. Emotional intelligence is valued, it is recognized as a very important factor in success, in being successful at job, in career, in relationships and all walks of life. What is the simplest and elegant definition of emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is defined by Brackett and his colleagues as the combination of two factors, combination of energy and pleasantness. According to the energy and pleasantness, we can at some or other quadrant of this 2 by 2 matrix. So, let us stay with this matrix for some time and think about who are the public figures, who are the leaders who have natural tendency to be in some or other quadrant of this energy pleasantness matrix. We can think about some personalities, and I am not going to tell about those. You need to think about and look at the examples around yourself, or pick up the people whom you are familiar to or you are following. Many of them have tendency to remain at high energy and low pleasantness block. Many of them have a natural tendency to be in the low energy and low pleasantness block. Many of them are very highly pleasant, but not very energetic, and some of them are high on both on energy as well as pleasantness. Let us look at this block of high energy, high pleasantness, and reflect what kind of leaders, teachers, managers, bosses we admire most. We invariably admire people who are high on both, who are high on energy and high on pleasantness. Think about what is the term in your mother tongue about all of these blocks in this 2 by 2 matrix. I am recording this lecture in Mumbai, and in Mumbai there is a term bindhast that is invariably used in the general conversation, and that actually conveys the idea about a person who is high on pleasantness, who is not very anxious, he is actually fun loving, high energy and still pleasant person. So, please think about some word in your mother tongue. For example, in Bangla utsahi, or Sanskrit word is also utsahi, they represent high energy, high pleasantness. So, you can think about terms for different blocks in your mother tongue to understand the essence of this matrix. The question is, since we want our leaders, teachers, managers to be at high energy, high pleasantness matrix, where am I located in this matrix? And if I am not located in the high energy and high matrix, what is my strategy to be there? You can take this assessment, you can identify the number based on your judgment, based on your reading about yourself, and think about how I can move towards +5 +5 in this matrix. So, what is the strategy? Strategy is first to recognize what is your general emotional disposition. That is why the first term is recognition or recognize emotion. In general, what is my emotional disposition? In general, what is the emotional state I live? And in particular, at a particular situation, I am feeling, that has to be recognized. That is the first step. After recognition, we can understand the emotions clearly. When we understand it, we can label that emotion. From recognition to labeling, our awareness cycle gets over. Until I am aware of the emotion, I cannot manage it. So, the first 3 steps ensure that I am aware of the emotion. When I am aware of the emotion, I can strategize how to express emotion. For example, anger. Anger, if I experience it, instead of just suppressing it, instead of just ignoring it, it is important to convey what is. For example, we look at ourselves and recognize that I am feeling angry. If I am feeling angry about something, about in certain situation, I need not to act out of anger, but I need to understand and label the emotion. Or if I am feeling disgust, or if I am feeling guilt, or if I am feeling affectionate, in all these emotions, we need to first understand and label this. Then we can express it appropriately. If it is anger, it is not to be acted upon, it has to be expressed. It is one thing to start shouting in the anger, it is another thing to tell the person that you have done this and that makes me upset. Please let me know if I am missing out something or if my anger is unjustifiable. In the second case, we are expressing emotion, but we are not acting upon emotion. When we express it, we give time to ourselves to regulate the our action, regulate our words about that emotion. So, the acronym RULER, RULER, that is for these 5 steps, and that is advocated by, that is explained beautifully by Brackett and his colleagues. Emotional intelligence is very important in everyday behavior. There is a study, there are so many studies, I am just quoting one of those, a very comprehensive study and thoroughly designed. It looked at college students and took the ability test of emotional intelligence, and they also looked at the big 5 personality trait. They wanted to understand whether emotional intelligence is affected by the personality type or not. So, big 5 personality type, many of you might remember that big 5 personality types are related to extroversion, means our tendency to express our behavior externally whenever I am facing some issue. Introversion means my tendency to going back within myself whenever I need energy. Conscientiousness meaning following the process, openness to experience, that means being experiment about life, about situations, and neuroticism means emotional instability. These are the 5 personality traits. This is called big 5. The big 5 was assessed, emotional intelligence was assessed, and then they were also asked to provide the life space scale information that looks at the self care behavior, leisure pursuit, academic activities and interpersonal relations. What in this study was found that women invariably they scored significantly higher than men on the emotional intelligence. However, emotional intelligence was a stronger predictor of the life space criteria for men. For men, if they become emotionally intelligent, that has much more impact on their life space scale related variables. And what happens when someone is suffering from low emotional intelligence or comparatively lower emotional intelligence? Principally, that is related to the inability to perceive emotions and to use emotion to facilitate thoughts, and that was also associated with the negative outcome. And what are the negative outcomes of lower emotional intelligence? In this study, amongst the college student, illegal drug and alcohol use, deviant behavior, poor relations with friend, all these variables were connected to low emotional intelligence. Finding remained significant even after statistically controlling for scores on big 5 and academic achievement. So, that means personality type or academic achievements are not connected to emotional intelligence. In other words, you need to don't worry whatever is your personality type, you need not to worry whether your academic achievement is high or not high in comparison to your colleagues. Still you can have emotional intelligence and still it will pay off. Still it will be one of the most important criteria to be successful in career, and in many situations it is more important than cognitive skills. It is more important in many situations in comparison to academic achievement. Let us look at what Yoga says about it. So, you recall our discussion on how mind works, and that is what we discuss according to the yogic perspective. There are vrittis, there are mind modifications, and there are klishta vrittis and aklishta vrittis. Klishta vrittis which are which causes suffering, which cause bondage, and aklishta vritti which are unhindered, not causing suffering. Mind modifications can be because of right knowledge, it can be because of viparya, which is avidya, asmita, rag, dvesh, abhinivesh, it can be because of imagination, sleep or memory. So, mind modifications can be klisht or aklisht. Depending on that, we have a kind of chitta bhumi, the quality of mind we attain, that can be chipta, which is very fluctuating, vikshipta generally fluctuating, ekagra is focused, niruddha means well controlled, completely in control. So, that is how the mind works. If we look at emotions from the Indic perspective, we see a very universal classification of emotions, and that is very useful to label the emotion and recognize that emotion. You remember the ruler, the recognition to labeling, these are the three important steps in the rural model of emotional intelligence. If we keep 9 or 10 or 8 rasas in our mind, we can very easily label and classify the emotions, what we are experiencing ourselves, what others are experiencing. So, Bharata Muni's Natya Shastra, which was written about 2000 years ago, it gives excellent classification of the different emotions. This is called rasas. Rasas are the dormant emotions. These are Shrangar, which is related to love and attractiveness, Hasya, which is related to laughter or comedy or mirth, Rodram, which is related to anger or fury, Karunya, which is related to compassion and mercy, Bibhats, which is meaning disgust and aversion, Bhayanakam, which is related to horror and terror, Veeram or Veeras, that is related to heroic mood, valor, courage, Adbhut ras, which is about the wonderment and amazement. These 8 rasas were identified by Bharata Muni in the Natya Shastra. Then there was a conceptual problem. The conceptual problem, which was recognized and then addressed by Abhinavagupta in 8th or 9th century, was that during the play, because Natya Shastra was about the drama and how people enjoy the drama, and in that connection the conceptual problem was that how come people enjoy seemingly contradictory rasas. So, Shrangar is a one type of rasa which has a very deep pleasantness in it, and Bibhats, it is a Bhayanak ras. In the same play, Rasik or the observers can enjoy both the rasas. How come that is possible? Because if I am in Shrangar, how I can move from Shrangar to Bibhats ras, and that is related to our personal life as well. Same people can experience one rasa at times and another rasa another time. What is that capability which makes people swiftly move from one rasa to another as it is appropriate according to a situation? There must be something else, there must be some backdrop under which this shifting of rasas, shifting of mood from one kind of rasa to another kind of rasa is happening, and that concept was added by Abhinavagupta. He gave the notion of Shantaras. So, Shantaras is like a substratum in which people experience fluctuation, and that fluctuation can be in the form of Shrangar ras or Hasya ras and Raudra ras, but people then come back to that substratum, and that also is enjoyable, that is also a rasa, that is Shantaras, tranquility. So, Indian perspective and yogic perspective of emotional intelligence is or emotional balance is that it is not about having only sweet emotions. We discussed in the second wave of positive psychology as well, there is a recognition, and that is kind of very long recognized in the Indian tradition, that there are no emotions which are only negative or only positive. Negative emotions sometimes result into personal growth, and positive emotions, they may sometimes tilt it toward hedonism, of which in the long run we may have negative outcome. So, there are no watertight strict negative emotions or positive emotions. What is important is to have appropriate emotion at appropriate time, and our ability to come back to samatva, our ability to regain the equanimity. When that capability is there, we call the person sthiti prajna, that is a very highest state, but we that in the normal life, in the day to day life, we call that sthiti called samatva, equanimity or emotional balance, that is required in the day to day life. And our ability to experience different rasas and coming back to Shantaras is the essence of emotional balance as per in the Indian perspective. How we experience emotion, that mechanism is given in the Natya Shastra, and that is elaborated in many other texts. For rasas to get expressed, you need a cause, that cause is called vibhav. That vibhav result into certain expression, certain symptom. For example, if joke is a vibhav or a cause, laughter or movement of shoulder, these are anubhavs, these are the symptoms. And then there are sanchari bhavs as well, because the laughter can have some finer emotions, emotions of vyang, emotions of helplessness, or emotions of real joy. There can be different flavors, different shades of hasya, and associated to the different shades there are various emotions, these are called sanchari bhav. And combination of vibhav, anubhav and sanchari bhav result into sanyog, and for rasa to get expressed in life in day to day moments, we need to have that sanyog. So, it is through the sanyog bhavas that rasas are manifest, and our ability to experience different emotions and express those appropriately, that is the essence of emotional intelligence. And what can help us to manage emotions, what can help us to decide what is the limit for me to experience a particular rasa in a situation, that decision is done by buddhi, the intellect. So, you might recall we have discussed this chariot model of human self, which is taken from the Kathopanishad. It clearly says that senses are like horses of chariot, rein is the man, the rein with which we control the rein with which a charioteer, and the charioteer who is holding the rein is intellect. The self, the real self, the Atman is the one which is standing, which is giving direction to the charioteer. Charioteer is like intellect. When charioteer is smart, it can hold man in some way which can direct the horses of senses to the desirable directions. How we can do that? What are the processes which can help the charioteer to give right direction to the horses? What is, how to strengthen the rein, which yoga has many interventions for them. So, let us look at how yoga helps in gaining emotional balance. In fact, all 8 angas Ashtang we say, the appendages or limbs, all 8 limbs help us in gaining the emotional balance in their unique ways. Yam and Niyam. Yam is the moral instruction and Niyam is the self purification process. We have already have a detailed discussion about the Yam Niyam earlier. Yam set the boundary conditions. Ahimsa, Satya, Aparigraha, Asteya, Brahmacharya. These 5 yamas, which essentially are the core principle with which this life, this existence operates, this existence works, only because of these 5 yamas that set the boundary condition. Once the boundary conditions are set, our self management boundaries are also set, and our self management boundary are the first inherent things, because for all self management or career management, we need to identify what is non negotiable in my disposition. What is something which I am not going to compromise, about which I am not going to negotiate, about which I am not going to try out things. Yamas give those non negotiables. So, lot of emotions are naturally get under control. Niyamas are the ways for us to improve further. Tap, Ishwar Pranidhan, Swadhyay, Shauch is cleansing, Santosh is contentment, Ishwar Pranidhan is surrender to the universal order. These are the ways of maintaining and cleansing our inner conditions. These are not only related to the mind inner conditions, these are not related to cleansing of body, and that helps preparing our inner ambience to manage our emotions. Asana. Asana is a psychosomatic alignment with brain wave coherence. In a very precise definition, we can say this about asanas. Asanas brings coherence in brain waves. These are the things coming out in several studies. Asanas lower the stress hormones and release happy hormones. In this way, asana can help in controlling emotional balance. Pranayam, we had a complete session on pranayam as well, which is about relaxation and regulation through breathing. We looked at how fascinating this act of breathing is. It is voluntary act, but it is necessary act. This is what connects our sympathetic and parasympathetic system, and whole process of managing self is about managing the balance of sympathetic and parasympathetic system. So, breathing, which is the core act or which is the core seat of pranayam, can help in balancing this system, and in this process it helps to gain and maintain emotional balance. Dharana, pratyahar, sense organs, or becoming inward focus in terms of our senses. We looked at in the pratyahar session, as there are bahya indriyas, means the senses which look at outward, so we have intrinsic indriyas, intrinsic senses. Because of the intrinsic senses, we are able to watch or listen things in dreams, even when our eyes are closed. We may not be in the sleep, in the dreaming phase, we may not be able to listen something which is going on outside, but we can listen something which we are seeing, which is coming in our dream. So, there are intrinsic indriyas. Closing the outer indriyas and awakening or just focusing on the intrinsic indriyas, that is the essence of pratyahar. And pratyahar is purposely stepping back our right mode of consciousness, and naturally that helps in gaining emotional balance. How it works, we looked at that whole mechanism in the last session, dhyan, that is the quieting of mind. This is a great space for the emergence of intelligence. When when the external senses are not processed and internal senses are still alert, in that state the dhyan happens, and when dhyan happens, emotional balance naturally comes to our life. Samadhi, we cannot discuss it in great detail about samadhi because it is much deeper experience. Nonetheless, we can say it is transcendent of emotions and individualized cognition. We become available to the universal intelligence in samadhi, the systemic intelligence in samadhi we become aware of. So, we can look at all steps of yoga, all appendages or limbs of yoga helps in gaining and maintaining emotional balance. A systematic review on yoga and positive psychology done by Chirag Dagar in his unpublished PhD thesis awarded recently by School of Management in IIT Bombay gives the three major fields where yoga and positive psychology coincide, and these are related to specific emotional domains. So, physiological and biological domain, psychological domain and neurological domain, and through all these processes yoga helps in not only gaining emotional balance, but also experiencing emotional joy, emotional ecstasy and remaining in that ecstatic state for long time. So, physiological or biological mechanism which helps in experiencing positive psychological outcomes through yoga are related to relaxation, enhanced parasympathetic nervous systems activity, focus on breath, interoceptive and bodily awareness. Neurological mechanisms are related to polyvagal theory. So, yoga functions as the neural practice and the activation of the inner neuron system, and that helps in attaining the positive psychological outcomes, and there are the host of psychological mechanism. Science of unitary human being talks about it, element of the theory of self efficacy talks about that, increase in the positive effect, affective coping, detachment, mindfulness, self compassion, mind body awareness, self regulation, sense of control, spirituality, sustained attention, reduced distraction, self awareness, self engagement, all these are the psychological mechanism through which yoga and positive psychology are connected, and we experience the emotional balance and we gain the emotional control. In this session, we are going to look at three major constructs. One construct is drawn from the Yoga Sutra and two constructs are drawn from the positive psychology. The positive psychological construct drawn from the Yoga Sutra is called Brahma Vihar. Brahma Vihar is combination of the four variables: Maitri, that is friendliness; Karuna, that is compassion; Mudita, that is joy seeing the excellence shown by others; and Upeksha means ignoring what is unpleasant or ignoring the others' faults. These are the four mind states together make Brahma Vihar. Psychological capital is the modern term, and it is also found to be an excellent composite which can explain many job related outcomes, academic success related outcomes, personal well-being related outcomes. So, these are hope, efficacy, resilience and optimism. These four variables constitute psychological capital. That is found to be very relevant at the workplace. Another term which is by many authors is considered to be the gold standard of well-being is called Parma. Parma is again combination of five factors. These are positive emotions, engagement, positive relationships, meaning and sense of accomplishment in life. Parama is more relevant in the day to day life, psychological capital is more relevant in the workplace context. That is why we can look at both of these terms. The review done by Chirag Dagar in his unpublished thesis looks at all these variables and beautifully summarizes how various yogic practices result into all of these outcomes. We cannot only discuss the positive emotions, we need to look at negative emotions as well, because for gaining emotional balance, as much it is important to enhance positive emotions, so much is the importance of managing negative emotions or the emotions which result into unpleasant experience or diminishing of our energy. So, we need to look at negative emotions as well. If we follow a hexaco model of personality, which is the modification of big 5 personality type, it gives it has 6th element or 6th type, which is called emotionality. Emotionality is related to emotional distress, and this is the combination of fearfulness, dependence, anxiety and sentimentality. That is the reflection of the negative emotions or those emotions which result into unpleasantness or which diminish our energy. Yogic tradition also classifies negative emotions in its own way. We have discussed about these klishta vrittis, which are asmita, rag, avidya, dvesh, abhinivesh, and we discussed that avidya is the cause of all 4 klishta vrittis. Asmita is too much egoism, too much attachment to the self identity. Rag is the undue attachment, dvesh is undue aversion, abhinivesh is tendency or perpetuate yourself in the form of body or in the form of fame and name. All these 5 result into shadripus or 6 enemies. 6 enemies are Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Mad, Matsar. Kam are the desires or sense pleasure. Overly indulgence in the sense pleasure is Kam. Krodh is unregulated anger. Moh is adharmic attachment, attachment to things which do not result into harmony within self and harmony in the environment, that is moh. Lobh is opposite of aparigrah, that is greed, our tendency to hoard lot of things, to possess lot of things, much more than what we actually require. Mad is too much of pride in our qualities, and because of that developing a tendency of laziness, that is matsar. So, all these 6 ripus or enemies are result of these 5 klishta vrittis. These are the expressions of negative emotions, that is what we can say. These eventually become not only emotion, but result into our behavior as well, and that is why these can be called attributes. We look at the 4 emotions which result into unpleasantness or which result into lack of energy. If we look at fearfulness or all 4, these when they happened, when they became part of human self, these emotions had some purpose. These are not useless emotions, but when we overplay on these, when these become more prominent in the personality, that result into emotional distress. So, evolutionarily speaking, we have to have concern about what is happening in the environment. We need to be alert about it. That was the function But when this alertness became excessive, when this concern became excessive, it becomes fearfulness, and that fearfulness becomes dysfunctional. Excessive attachment with the outcome. We all are goal directed beings. We all have to achieve something in life. We work best when we have some objective in life. But when we are too attached to the outcome of the activity, we think much more about the outcome rather than enjoying the process and remaining connected with the process. That state is called anxiety. Anxiety meaning we are too attached and want to look at the outcome of effort more immediately, earlier than a process can happen and process can allow the outcome to appear front of us. Similarly, we could find family or community because they were able to trust each other, they were able to develop that complementary relationship with each other. When this trust became excessive and result into dependence, it becomes cause of emotional distress. That is another form of emotionality. Similarly, we were able to live in a family or community because we build relationship, we have sense of attachment with each other, that is how friendships appear, that is how relationships are built. But when we are too attached to some people, certain things, certain situations, certain places, that too much of attachment makes us sentimental about those, and too much attachment becomes makes us sentimental, too much aversion also becomes sentimental. So, we can see that there are some rudimentary emotions which are important, but when these are overplayed, when they become much more than what is required to remain functional, they take the shape of emotional distress. Fearfulness, anxiety, sentimentality, dependence are those kind of emotions. How you can help in managing these emotions, managing negative emotions? There are different ways of managing these emotions. Some of the examples we are going to look at. One is exposure therapy. Exposure therapy is prominently useful in anxiety and to some extent sentimentality. What we do in the exposure therapy? We make the list of situations which trigger anxiety. Then we need not to worry about the level of anxiety when we are preparing the list, but we need to continue to work on that list and give the hierarchy. Look at what you wrote and organize them, and once that gives you less anxiety to the ones that are the larger source of anxiety. So, there are something which give you more anxiety than others. You look at you start addressing things which give lesser anxiety. So, you can be little relaxed about those things. Then you think about the worst scenario, look at your new organized list, take the moment to think about what could be the worst thing you would have faced in those situations, why is that worst, how likely it is to happen, what could you do to prevent it, what is the best way to deal with it if it really happens, and try to answer these questions. In that process, we become more cognitive, we become more aware of the situation, and then we can start working on these items one by one. That is the exposure therapy, that is very useful in managing anxiety. There are methods which can be helpful to for the grounding and centering, and these are useful for managing sentimentality as well as managing dependence. What do we do in that? What are the 5 things you can see? That is the way to distract ourselves, that is the way to take away our excessive emotional investment in one situation to another. What are the 4 things you can feel? What are the 3 things you can hear? What are the 2 things you can smell? What is one thing you can taste? By this technique called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique, you can purposefully take in the details of your surrounding using each of your senses, and strive to notice small details that your mind would usually tune out, such as distant sound or a texture of the ordinary object. When we do that, our mind is taken away, our thoughts and emotions are taken away from the things which makes us anxious, which makes us sentimental, which makes us dependent on something, and that creates a self space. In order to decrease the dependence, when the basic and particularly sentimentality, the one method is self care. When the basic emotional needs are neglected, it can perpetuate a vicious cycle of sentimentality, where you are unduly emotionally attached by other individuals or external states. So, it is time to turn focus on yourself and determine what your basic needs are that can be fulfilled. So, list down the basic needs: eating well, living healthily, sleeping well, enough sleeping for enough time, exercising, scheduling. We also need to look at who are the people in our circle, listing down the family, friendship, career, personal hobby. These all are the different domains in which we experience life. Sentimentality happens when we emphasize too much on one or two domains. When we write down these things, when we write down multiple domains which are equally important for our well-being, we realize that which are the domains we are giving disproportionately higher time and which are the domains which we are neglecting. Once we identify those domains which we are neglecting, we need to give more time and energy to that, and that naturally result into decrease in sentimentality and dependence. If you look at all these methods require our mind to get little disconnected from the ongoing perpetual or cyclical ways of thinking. Because there is cyclicity, there is a perpetualness of the similar thoughts again occurring again and again, we keep experiencing deeper level of anxiety or dependence or sentimentality. Yoga helps us to break that cycle. One very simple method, when I am experiencing anxiety or any of these emotional distress, very clearly the best method is to start doing abdominal breathing. We discussed abdominal breathing in the pranayam chapter. So, what happens, when we breathe through the stomach, you can keep your hand on navel and focus on that part, and then while breathing keep the focus over there. We will naturally start abdominal breathing. In the abdominal breathing, our lungs get more space to expand. As a result, we can absorb more oxygen. The narrowness of our breathing actually causes emotional distress. By doing abdominal breathing, we are prolonging our breath. We are also allowing lungs to absorb more oxygen. Relaxed lungs actually relax heart, relax brain, and that result into relaxed thoughts, and that result into muscle relaxation. So, a 3-minute abdominal breathing or 5-minute be very helpful to come out of any negative episodes of anxiety, sentimentality, dependence, etc. We have identified a protocol drawn from the Ministry of Ayush's master protocol, which is being released and which is freely available on the YouTube. We can look at the Ministry of Ayush protocol. Out of that, we have drawn this 25-minute process, and lot of research studies are being conducted using this protocol, which starts with unfreezing through reverberation, shaking the body and body tapping for 3 minutes, which is combination of asanas, Vrakshasana, Padahastasana and Trikonasana, that can be done for 3 minutes. These are the processes designed which can be carried out in the school, colleges and offices. So, that is why we have not included Sarvangasana or asanas which require supine posture in this protocol. This is just to have some sense of relaxation and regain emotional balance. That is followed by pranayam. So, in the pranayam section we recommend 4 pranayam: Ujjayi, high frequency yoga breathing which is called Kapalabhati, alternate nostril breathing which is Anulom Vilom, and breathing with humming, that is called Brahmari. So, a specific time and the cycle and the frequency is mentioned here. We can follow that, and that can be followed by samatha meditation, that is body scan and sitting meditation. How it is done? It is done by bringing back focus of attention to breath, and then we start the body scan. Body scan can start from the right leg, from the big toe, then the attention can come to the ankle, to knee, to thigh. Then we can shift our attention to the left leg, starting from big toe to the smaller toes one by one, then ankle, then the left knee, left thigh, gonad, stomach, chest. Gradually we can take our attention from chest to the shoulder, right shoulder, left shoulder, neck, head. We can take attention to the breath. With the attention to the breath, we can take our attention to the stomach and the movements going on in the stomach with breathing. This simple meditation for about 7-8 minutes, it is basically a relaxation process, completes this 25 minutes protocol. We have found that if this much is done, at least this much is done for even 7 or 8 weeks, we can experience a clear shift in many outcomes like psychological capital, more engaged living, more positive emotions, etc. So, in this section we looked at how negative emotions can be managed through the yogic practices. In the next part, we are going to look at how to inculcate positive emotions and what are the different positive emotions can be inculcated with the yoga based practices, which is the real essence of managing Manomay Kosh. Before we talk about the psychological mechanism, which is the main part of the session, we can recall what is the bioscience related findings about managing emotions through yoga, and what we have discussed earlier as well. This is a kind of a recap that yoga has positive impact on many happy hormones, which means the increased levels of endorphin, serotonin and dopamine. Endorphin, it improves the response to stress, and that is found to be released more with the yogic practices. GABA is the gamma aminobutyric acid, and that has a very important role in generating calming effect in our day to day experience. GABA is also found to be getting secreted more with the yoga based practices. Serotonin, very important to decrease anxiety, for the restful sleep. Dopamine is again a feel good hormone. These both are found to be getting more secretion with the yoga based practices, and yoga helps in balancing the release of these biomarkers, these specific hormones, and that results into a emotional balance. In the next session, we are going to look at what all are the psychological mechanisms through which yoga helps us to gain emotional balance.